Good day to everyone. Our topic for today is all about fringe benefits. So, fringe benefits, it pertains to all other benefits or incentives of employee other than the basic pay. So, the basic pay is the fixed regular salary or wages of employees every payroll period. So, that's in accordance with labor code. So, therefore, fringe benefits pertain to goods or services or other benefits furnished by the employer to the employees. So, it is a benefits aside from the salaries or compensation that was given by the employer to the employees. So, the rationale of granting fringe benefits is this is given to employees in a form of incentive to encourage the employees' productivity and loyalty to employer. So you heard it right. Hindi siya binibigay. It's because gusto lang ng employees. It's because gusto ng mga employer kasi na bigyan ng incentives yung mga employees na nagtagal na sa work nila, okay, sa companies for about 5 years to 10 years. And maganda yung performance, excellent. So, binibigyan yan nila ng fringe benefits. So, hindi siya mandatory na the company will give benefits to the employees. So, it's in the discretion, okay, of the management if gusto nilang bigyan or hindi. Okay, so uulitin natin, hindi naman mandatory yung fringe benefits. Okay, this was given as an incentives to encourage the employees to be productive and to be loyal to the employer or to the company they are currently employed to. So, therefore, during the financial difficulties, the employer may decrease or discontinue the previously given fringe benefits. Okay? But cannot reduce the wage or salary of a specified amount once it is given to employees. Okay, so klaro tayo dyan. Therefore, dahil itong fringe benefit na to is within the sole discretion of the employer, so if ever matumal yung or hindi maganda yung financial performance ng company, pwede nilang i-decrease or pwede nila talagang i-stop ang pagbibigay ng fringe benefits na to. Okay? However, if ganun yung case, hindi pwedeng pababaan ng company yung salaries. Okay? Kasi mandatory yun. Okay, and it is in accordance with the labor code. Okay, so that's the rationale of giving fringe benefits by the employers to the employees. Let's proceed with the tax classification of fringe benefits. So generally, hindi naman lahat ng fringe benefit is taxable. And hindi lahat ng fringe benefits are subject to tax or fringe benefit or final tax. There are some fringe benefits that are part of the compensation. Just like for example, for our bullet number 1, fringe benefits that are fixed every payroll period are considered regular compensation. Isang example dyan is yung fixed transportation allowance ng kada employee. So that's a fringe benefits, however, that will form part of your regular compensation. Okay? So on the second bullet, fringe benefits that are variable and performance-based are considered supplemental compensation. Example, commissions, aside from your salary. We have profit sharing if ever na hit ninyo yung quota aside from your salary. So this will be given to you, and overtime pay. So these benefits will not form part of the taxable fringe benefit that is subject to final tax. This will form as a supplemental compensation. Aside from that, the bullet number 3, fringe benefits in the form of incentives are considered 13-month pay and other benefits. Yes, these are still considered fringe benefits, okay, in the form of incentives, pero hindi po sila taxable as final tax. Okay? So, they are part of the compensation, and if it's 13-month pay and other benefits, they will be subjected to the ceiling, which is 90,000 under the Trin law. Kasi before 82,000 lang yan. But because of the tax acceleration and inclusion, um, from 82 naging 90,000 ceiling. The rest, if mag-exceed man ito, magiging taxable na siya. Okay? In the amount that exceeds 90,000. And itong bullet number 4, fringe benefits furnished for the employer's convenience necessity or those that are considered as de minimis are exempt from income tax. Okay, so we already discussed de minimis, okay, in the previous tutorial. These are small benefits that are given to employee as additional support. For example, clothing allowance, uniform allowance, Christmas bonus, productivity bonus. So these are the minimis. Leave benefits for private and government employees, rise subsidies. So those are de minimis benefits. Aside from that, we have employer's convenience or necessity, lalong-lalo na if it's really needed in the operation of the business. So, bibigyan ka ng bahay kasi nga malayo ang bahay ng isang managerial position. Okay? So, that is not taxable actually. If that is under the convenience of the employer or necessity. Okay? So, we have other fringe benefits that are not included or classifiable as item of compensation income and which are not exempted under the law. And these are treated as follows. So, we have to categorize the fringe benefits if ibibigay natin siya kay rank and file or kay managerial and supervisory employees. Kasi may kinalaman ito sa taxability nila. So kapag rank and file employees ang bibigay natin, so this will be included as other benefits under the 13-month pay and other benefits, which the first 82,000 is excluded from the gross income. So remember, 82,000 is yan pa yung old NIRC natin. So ang pinakabago ngayon under the train law is 90,000. So etong fringe benefits ng mga rank and file employees, mafo-fall doon siya sa 13-month pay and other benefits, which will be subjected to the ceiling that which was given under the train law na 90,000. Okay? So, hindi na ngayon 82,000 kundi 90,000 pesos. Now, for managerial and supervisory employees, so these are excluded from your compensation income kasi nga subject siya kay final fringe benefit tax. Now, because of the train law, 35% na po siya ngayon, final tax. So, therefore, i-gross up natin siya by 65%. Bakit i-gross up natin siya? Kasi ang ibibigay na kasi kay employee is net amount. Ang magbabayad kasi ng fringe benefit is si employer. So, once nabigay na yan siya kay employee, net of final tax na yan. So, if we are going to solve the fringe benefit tax given to the employee, so i-gross up muna natin siya by 65% to get the 100% before natin i-multiply yung 35%. Now, ano ba yung dating percentage niya, sir? So, dati kasi 32%. Kaya, gino-gross up natin yung fringe benefits na binibigay kay employee by 68% at i-multiply natin by 32. So, always remember, dati 32, ngayon 35%. And that's the tax treatment of fringe benefit as to the rank and file employees and managerial and supervisory employees. Before we proceed to the fringe benefits that are subject to final tax, let us first discuss the exempt fringe benefits. So the following fringe benefits are exempt to the fringe benefit tax, meaning hindi po sila pwedeng taksan natin ng 35% final tax. Okay, first item is fringe benefits which are authorized and exempted under the tax or under the special laws rather. So example natin dito is yung mga benefits natin from the employer's contribution to SSS, PhilHealth, okay, HDMF or pag-ibig or group insurance. So ayan, binibigay yan sa atin or yan yung counterpart ng employer sa atin of giving mandatory benefits. Okay, so yung mga counterpart ng employers, hindi po siya pwedeng i-subject sa final tax. For the bullet number 2, benefits required by the nature of or necessary to the trade, business, profession of the employer. So that is benefits under employees benefit rule. So a benefit is said to be for the convenience or advantage of the employer when it is required by the nature of work necessary to the trade, business, or profession of the employer. So benefit under employer's benefit rule is not subject to income tax. Okay, or this is also not subject to fringe benefit tax. Ayan, for example, Mario Chuper, a driver of a physician, receives 99,000 as basic salary. So, in addition to his basic salary, he provided a free board and lodging by his employer. So, yung free board and lodging na yun, na binigay ng employer niya is an example of fringe benefit. So let's continue with an approximate value of 5,000 per month with an agreement that he can be filed to be called to work anytime. So needed talaga ng nature ng business or profession ng employer or business ng empleyado. So, okay, bullet number 2 and 3 are the same. Benefit given for the convenience or advantage of the employer. Okay, so next bullet tayo, contributions of the employer for the benefit of the employee to retirement, insurance, and hospitalization benefit plans. So, hindi din yan kasama. And benefit given to rank and file employees, whether or not granted under collective bargaining agreement. The taxable benefits of rank and files are exempt from the fringe benefit tax but are subject to regular income tax as part of the compensation income. So, meaning, hindi siya subject sa final tax na 35% na fringe benefit tax pero hindi necessarily mean na exempt din siya to other tax. Okay? So, yung kanina na sa rank and file fringe benefit, 'di ba subject siya to um, compensation or part siya ng compensation income. So, specifically 13-month and other benefits. So, alam naman natin na yung 13-month and other benefits again is subject to ceiling. Okay, as per train law 90,000. So, if ever yung 13-month and other benefits is 120,000 na at nandoon yung fringe benefit na binigay ng employer, so hanggang 90,000 lang talaga. So the excess or the 30,000 will be taxable na or part of the taxable compensation income. So sana maliwanag tayo dun. And the last one, the minimis benefits. Okay? Not in excess of their legal limits. So may limits naman tayo, right? When it comes to the minimis benefits. Kasi these are considered small benefits lang, mandatory, are given by the employer to the employees. So those are the exempt fringe benefits. Is the fringe benefit tax. Okay? So the fringe benefit tax is a final tax imposed on the fringe benefits furnished, granted, or paid by the employer to the employee except rank and file employees. So we already discussed that. Okay, nung i-classify natin yung fringe benefits natin as two benefits kay rank and file at saka managerial positions. Okay? So, ayan. Furnished, granted or paid by the employer to employee except rank and file employees. Kasi part yan ng compensation ng employee, more specifically sa 13-month and other benefits. Tapusin natin ang definition. Whether such employer is an individual, professional partnership, or a corporation, regardless of whether the corporation is taxable or not. As to income tax or government and its instrumentalities. Okay, so kung si government magbibigay ng fringe benefit, that is subject also to final tax. Okay? Fringe benefits include but not limited to the following. So, ito yung mga examples ng mga benefits na pwedeng ibigay ng employer kay employee. Example, housing benefits. Ayan. So, pwede yung ibigay ng employer kay employee if really gusto ng employer is to give incentives for their hard work and productivity to the company, mamimigay ng housing benefit ang company. Aside from that, expense accounts, ayan, vehicles in any kind, pwede motor vehicles, ayan. Aside from that, household personnel such as maid, drivers, or others, ayan, because of your hard work and service, and then, needed siya, Ayan, sa trabaho mo, okay, bibigyan ka or kailangan talaga ng ano, lalong-lalo na kapag nakadestino ka sa ibang place, okay, other than your residence. Ayan, so, para hindi ka lang aalis sa company, so, bibigyan ka ng maid, drivers, ayan. So, lahat yun are fringe benefits, okay? Aside from that, interest for the difference between the market rate na 12% and the actual interest granted. So, for example, instead na mangungutang ka sa labas, ayan, that yung interest rate niya is 12% higher, so why not ang company nila ang magbibigay sa'yo or magpapautang sa'yo at a lower interest. So, the excess of the interest given by the imposed by the company as to the market rate of interest outside, so that is considered fringe benefits. Okay, aside from that, membership fees, dues, and other expenses borne by the employer for the employee in social and athletic clubs or other similar organizations. So, remember, yung mga memberships na to is hindi yung membership na, for example, sa profession natin, PICPA, yan may membership fees tayo doon na hindi naman yan, di ba? May kinalaman sa athletic clubs and other similar organizations. So that is our personal need kasi dapat as accountants, 'di ba? Need natin magpa-member sa mga organizations na belong tayo. So hindi yan kasama doon sa membership fees na tinutukoy dito sa fringe benefits. And we have also expense for foreign travels. Ayan, so pwede din yung ibigay as benefit ng employer. Aside from that, we have holiday and vacation expenses and educational assistance to employee kung hindi naman ka-employee, pati kay dependents. Ayan. And the last one is life or health and other non-life insurance premiums or similar accounts in excess of what the law allows. Okay, so there you have it. Ito yung mga examples ng fringe benefits na pwedeng ibigay ng employer kay employee. Okay? Just to promote the employee's productivity and loyalty to the employer. So let's proceed to the characteristics of fringe benefit tax. Okay, first bullet is final tax. Okay, alam na natin to kanina, inulit na natin to. So, fringe benefit tax which belongs to managerial position and supervisory position is subject to final tax. Ayan, the final tax is withheld by the employer at source. So, meaning si employer ang magbabayad ng final tax, okay, for the fringe benefits given by the employer to the employee. So thus, the employee did not report the fringe benefits in his income tax return. So aside from that, tax upon managerial or supervisory employee, the fringe benefit is not a tax to the employer. So it is a tax upon the benefit realized by the managerial or supervisory employee. Hence, it applies regardless the identity of the employer. Okay? I hope klaro yan. Next is, it is paid by the employer. Kasi nga, di ba, it is withheld at source. So, si employer ang magbabayad niyan. So, as a final tax, it will be withheld at source and will be remitted by the employer to the government. So, kaya, the employer will withheld this one and mag-i-entry siya sa general journal niya, diba, ng fringe benefit expense. Then, credit niya kung ano yung binigay niya, for example, cash or any appropriate account. And then, ayun, the withholding tax payable. Okay? So, yung fringe benefit expense is 100%. Yung cash is the 68% or the 65% under the train law. And then, the withholding tax payable is yung fringe benefit tax na 35%. So, if you will know how to entry this one, madali lang naman. Okay? Kasi nga, it is paid by the employer, meaning may i-entry tayo sa libro natin. Ayan. So, it is gross up tax. Okay, the monetary value of the amount of the fringe benefit realized or taken home by the employee is effectively net of the final tax. Bakit net of the final tax? Kasi nga, si employer ang nagbayad ng 32% or ng 35% as per train law. Ayan. So, meaning, ang ibibigay na employer sa inyo is net na ng final tax. Meaning, kung 100% yan at binawasan nyo na ng 35%, ang nasa sayo na value is net of final tax, which is 68% only. So, for you to compute the fringe benefit expense, okay, so you need to gross up to its own percentage para makuha yung 100%. Okay, so that is the gross. Okay, and then for you to get the fringe benefit tax, so you will going to multiply the 100% or the gross up by the percentage of the final tax, which is 35%. Okay, so hence the monetary value is first grossed by the complement percentage of the applicable benefit tax before the benefit tax rate is applied. Okay, gross up muna before multiply it to 35%. And it is due quarterly. The fringe benefit tax is due for remittance quarterly based on the accounting period selected by the employer. The monetary value of each taxable fringe benefit is determined and reported quarterly through BIR Form 1603. Okay, so the fringe benefit tax due is as follows. So we have here the manual filing. So kapag magma-manual filing tayo, it is filed on or before the 10th day of the month following the quarter in which the withholding was made. So tatandaan natin yan. What about if hindi ka nag-manual filing, sir? So nag-electronic filing payment system ka. So ang magiging due date niya is on or before the 15th day of the month following the quarter in which the withholding was made. So magkaiba po ng date of filing kapag manual or EFPS or electronic filing payment system. So we have to remember that. We have here the procedures in computing the fringe benefit tax. So we all know na the characteristics, diba? The rationale and the non-taxable and taxable fringe benefits. Ito ngayon is paano na natin i-compute yung fringe benefit tax. First procedure is we have to determine the monetary value. So, we have different rules naman on the valuation of the fringe benefits kasi nga naman hindi nga siya naglilimit lang sa cash, 'di ba? It could be vehicles or any in kind, 'di ba? So, dapat alam natin kung ano yung valuation niya before natin siya i-gross up later. So, when the benefit is given in cash or paid in cash, ano yung magiging monetary value natin? So, the monetary value is the amount paid in cash. Ganun lang kasimple, di ba? The amount granted or paid for. So, the only exception here is when the employer pays the rent of the residence of the employee. So, kapag ganun, rent yung binabayaran ng employer, so the monetary value is 50% of the rental payment. Okay? So, we have to remember that. But when the benefit is given in kind, so other than cash or money, the monetary value is the fair value or book value, whichever is higher. So, mamimili pa tayo. For example, property. So, if given ang fair value at given naman na yung book value, piliin natin yung mas higher. Okay? So, kapag computation na kasi ng base, whichever is higher talaga yan. Kasi kapag deduction, whichever is lower. Ganun talaga ang tax code. Okay? So, whichever is higher tayo. When the ownership over the property is transferred to the employee, so, mapapansin natin dito sa statement, may transfer of ownership. Now, meaning sir, hindi lahat ng fringe benefit is masasakay employee at the end, diba? So, there are fringe benefits na ang ownership pa din is na kay employer. So, only the use of truck was given to the um, given to the employee. So, if ever the ownership over the property is transferred, meaning all the risk and rewards was transferred to the employee, ano yung magiging monetary value natin ito? The entire fair value of the property, even if the property is partially used in business, okay, of the employer. Kahit na ginagamit siya, okay, partly for personal and partly for business, as long as the ownership is transferred, the entire fair market value of the property So, klaro tayo dyan na. But when the benefit given is in the form of free use only or usufruct, okay, of the employer's property, the monetary value is 50% of the rental value of the property. Okay, so if the property has no rental value, what will be the alternative? The depreciation value is used. So for purposes of the depreciation value, the presumptive useful lives of the property are, okay, 20 years for real properties. Hence, the depreciation value is computed 1 over 20 or 5% of the value of the property. Kaya nagtataka kayo, di ba? During your undergrad or baka may mga reviewees na uh, nanonood or nakikinig, saan ba yung 5% na yun? Okay? So, usually, that is in estimation. Okay? Presumptive useful lives pala yan. Kapag real property, 20 years, that is why mag-multiply muna tayo ng 5%, okay, to the fair market value or zonal value, whichever is higher. So, kapag movable properties naman, that's 5 years, yung life niya. Hence, the depreciation value is computed 1 over 5 or 20% of the value of the property. So, that's how you determine the monetary value. If it is given in cash or in kind. And aside from given in cash or in kind, if its ownership is transferred or not. Okay? So, you have to remember and dapat alam natin yan para hindi tayo magkamali sa pag-compute natin ng gross up. Kasi dyan tayo magbe-base ng gross up monetary value. So, there you have it for the first step in computation of your fringe benefit tax. So, we are still on the first procedure. So, yung mga rulings na na-encounter natin on the previous slides, okay, in getting the monetary value. So, i-apply natin dito sa housing fringe benefits. Now, we have 4 particulars in the housing privileges given by the employer to the employee. So, we have lease of residential property for residential use of the employee. So, ano yung magiging annual benefit natin? Yung amount of the rental paid. So, kung magkano yung binigay, yun yung i-consider natin. So, magkano yung monetary value? 50% times the rental payments. Okay? If the ownership is not given. Pero if ever the ownership is given to the employer, hindi na tayo magmumultiply ng 50% kasi, okay, sabi ng previous rulings natin on the previous slide, if the ownership is transferred to the employee, so the monetary value is the fair market value of the property. Now, I have here an example. So, Pretty Corporation purchased a residential property and transferred the same in the name of its chairman. So, dito pa lang, we could still consider na may transfer of ownership. So, alam na natin kung paano natin to i-consider or i-recognize. Okay, the actual fair market value. Ayan, as fringe benefit. The property has a fair market value of 6 million and a zonal value of 5 million. So, binigyan tayo ng dalawang figures, the market value and the zonal value. Now, dahil binigay ang ownership, so hindi na natin i-doubt ito kasi nga fair market value ang gagamitin natin. Therefore, the fair market value will be grossed up by 65% and then multiplied by 32%. Ganun siya kapag ang ownership is na transfer. Now, how about assignment of residential property? So, ang annual value ng benefit niya is the fair market value or zonal value, whichever is higher. Now, ano yung magiging monetary value niya? That's 5%. Multiply mo siya, yung 5%, as to the fair market value or zonal value, whichever is higher. So, kung ano yung higher between the two, imumultiply mo lang ng 5%. Okay? So, example, Pretty Corporation pa din assigned its own residential building as residential house of its marketing manager with a fair market value of 6 million at may zonal value na 5 million. So, same lang, pero assignment ito. Okay, in this case. So, wala namang sinabi na ang ownership is binigay kasi assignment lang. Ayan, inassign lang sa'yo for employee use. Ayan, so we have to choose the higher between the two, zonal and market value. So, ang pinaka-higher naman is obviously the 6 million. So, 6 million will be multiplied by 5%. And then, aside from that, hindi naman na-transfer yung ownership, i-multiply natin siya by another 50%. Okay, so wag tayong malito dito sa monetary value kasi magmumultiply tayo ng 50% from this monetary value if ever ang ownership is hindi na hindi nabigay. Pero kapag nabigay naman, so hindi na tayo magmumultiply ng 50%. So, sana hindi kayo malito niyan. So, aside from that, we have purchase of residential property on installment basis. Ayan, so ano yung magiging annual benefit? The acquisition cost. Exclusive of the interest. So, exclusive po yan, 50% of the acquisition cost. Ayan, times 50% if that is hindi binigay yung ownership. Okay? Pero kapag binigay yung ownership on the name of the employee, hindi po tayo magmumultiply ng 50%. Next is the purchase of residential property and ownership is transferred in the name of the employee. So, ayan. The fair market value or the zonal value, whichever is higher, yung magiging annual benefit natin. So, ang magiging monetary value, kung ano yung higher doon. So, mapapansin ninyo, since na-transfer ang ownership nito, so hindi na tayo nag-multiply ng 50%. So, magmumultiply lang talaga tayo if ever ang ownership is not transferred. Meaning na kay employer pa ang ownership at hindi na transfer kay employee. Now, hindi lahat ng housing privilege are taxable for final tax for fringe benefit tax. So, we have here exempt housing privileges if this belongs to military officials of the AFP, PAF, PA, and PN on their quarters which are within accessible from the military camp so they can be readily available on call to meet the exigencies of the other military service. We have also housing unit situated or adjacent to the premises of the business or factory. So, kung adjacent lang siya, yung housing unit na yun, within a maximum of 50 meters from the perimeter of the business premises, then that is exempt housing privileges. Kasi nga, di ba, under the convenience of the employer's rule tayo. And then we have temporary housing for an employee in housing unit for 3 months or less. So kung for 3 months or less yan, that is exempt under the law. So that's the rulings in getting your monetary value pagdating sa housing privileges and what are the exempt housing privileges under the tax code. Proceed to the motor vehicles. Now, paano ba natin kukunin yung monetary value ng motor vehicles? Now, we have anim na bullet points when it comes to motor vehicle privileges. First is the purchase of motor vehicle in the name of the employee. So, tinransfer ang ownership. The annual benefit here is the acquisition cost. Kung ano yung invoice cost, yun na yung magiging monetary value natin. So, the monetary value will be grossed up by 65% and multiplied by 32% for the fringe benefit tax. Now, on the second point, cash for the purchase. Okay? Provided by the employer. Binigyan ka ng cash ng employer. Okay? To purchase motor vehicle privilege. Ayan. So, ano yung magiging annual benefit natin? The cash received by the employee. And that will also be our monetary value. Now, if ever purchased on an installment basis by the employer in the name of the employee, installment ha? Okay? Ayan. Under the name kanino? Employee. So, therefore, there is a transfer of ownership. So, ano yung magiging annual benefit natin? Acquisition cost. But the monetary value is magkano? acquisition cost divided by 5. So, kasi ito motor vehicle ito, and this is movable property. So, di ba, kapag installment, i-divide natin siya by 5 kasi yung 5 is a presumptive depreciation life of the uh, personal property or movable properties. So, if you will observe, dahil nakapangalan yan sa employee, hindi tayo magmumultiply ng 50%. Another, a portion of the purchase price shouldered by the employer. Now, the annual benefit here is the amount shouldered by the employer, and that is also the monetary value. Next, what if there is a fleet of motor vehicles, and marami, owned and maintained by the employer? So, meaning ang ownership is hindi na pasa kay employee, kundi na kay employer pa din. Pero, bakit siya binigay sa iyo? For use only, for the business and the employee. So, ano yung magiging annual benefit natin? Acquisition cost divided by 5 years. Ayan. But the monetary value will be further multiplied by 50% kasi ang ownership is hindi nabigay sa atin. Okay? Or sa employee. The last one is the fleet of motor vehicles leased by the employer for the employee. So, we have an annual benefit here of rental payments. Then, the monetary value will be rental payments multiplied by 50% kasi nga, nirentahan lang siya sa atin for us na gamitin natin siya sa business. So, that's rental payments times 50%. So, we are now on the foreign travel expenses. So, at this point, reasonable business expenses which are paid for by the employer for the foreign travel for his employee for the purpose of attending business meetings or conventions shall not be treated as taxable fringe benefits as long as yung usage niya is for attending business meetings. Okay, or conventions, minsan 'di ba kapag mga managers o supervisory, ayan, or any employees na pinapadala for conventions, ayan, outside the country, is not really treated as taxable fringe benefits. Pero there are times na nagiging taxable siya. So, unahin muna natin yung mga hindi subject to fringe benefit tax. So, reasonable expenses for the employee paid by the employer to attend business meetings or convention. Example, inland travel expenses, such as those incurred for food, beverages, or local transportation are not subject to fringe benefit tax. However, for cost of lodging costs, ayan, in a hotel or similar establishment, any cost incurred in excess of an average of 300 US dollars per day shall be subject to fringe benefit tax. Kaya makikita nyo on the other column, which is subject to fringe benefit tax, any lodging costs, okay, in a hotel or establishment in excess of $300. Okay, so kapag hindi nag-exceed ng $300, that is non-taxable. However, kapag ang ano naman natin or ang ginamit ng employee puntang foreign country is economy ticket, that is also not subject to fringe benefit tax. Pero kapag first class ticket yan at hindi economy, ano yung magiging taxable at saka non-taxable? Magiging non-taxable yung first 70% kapag first class, and that 30% will be subject to fringe benefit tax. Kaya makikita nyo dito sa not subject to fringe benefit tax on bullet number letter D, 70% of the cost of the first class. Okay, hindi yan taxable. But the 30% on bullet letter C on the other side is taxable. Okay, so yan yung classification when it comes to first class ticket. Pero kapag economy naman is hindi naman siya subject to fringe benefit tax. Okay? So the expenses should be supported by documents proving the actual occurrences of meetings or conventions. Yan lang naman yung kinakailangan dito para hindi maging non-taxable. Para hindi maging taxable fringe benefits. Okay? So, other types of benefits that are subject to FBT is yung traveling expenses paid by the employer for the travel of the family members. Okay? Hindi naman yan in uh, business meeting purposes. Okay? So, at saka kapag walang mga documentary evidences showing that employees travel abroad was in connection with the business meetings. So, therefore, kailangan ng substantiation requirements dito. Okay, in the absence of documentary evidence showing that the employee's travel abroad was in connection with business meetings or convention, the entire cost of the ticket, including the cost of hotel accommodation and other expenses incident thereto, should be shouldered by the employer and shall be treated as taxable fringe benefits. So, klaro tayo dyan. Let us now move to educational assistance. So, the following rules shall be applied whenever an employer provides educational assistance to the employee for his dependents. So, sa taxable muna tayo. Magiging taxable fringe benefit dito if the cost of education assistance is borne by the employer. Okay? And the cost of assistance is extended by employer to the dependents of the employee. So binigyan yung mga anak mo ng scholarship, grants for education, so that is subject to fringe benefit tax. Magiging ano lang yan, non-taxable to fringe benefit if the education or study involved is directly connected with the employer's trade, business, or profession. And there is a written contract that the employee is under obligation to remain in the employment of the employer for a period of time mutually agreed upon. So agreed by both parties, the employee and the employer. And if the assistance is provided through competitive scheme under scholarship program, if competitive scheme, hindi ka lang basta-basta binigyan ng scholarship. So, nag-exam ka at ikaw yung napili, so hindi yan taxable. Okay? Yung mga may return of service, hindi din yan taxable. So, yun lang naman yung simple rules pagdating natin sa educational assistance. Now, let's proceed with the cost of insurance or insurance benefits. So, these benefits refers to life or health insurance and other non-life insurance premiums or similar amounts in excess of what the law allows. Okay? So the cost of life and health insurance and other non-life insurance premiums borne by the employer or shouldered by the employer for his employee shall be treated as taxable fringe benefits except for the following. So meron naman tayong exemptions. Okay, so these are not subject to fringe benefit tax. So first, if the contributions of the employer for the benefit of employee pursuant to provisions of existing law such as under SSS, GSIS, okay, or any existing laws. And the next one is the cost of premiums borne by the employer for the group insurance of his employees. So, klaro tayo dyan. So, therefore, any cost of life, okay, aside from what the employee what the law allows is subject to fringe benefit tax except na lang if that is contributions under SSS or GSIS or under group insurance for his employees. Now, we have also membership fees, dues, and other expenses. Now, these are borne by the employer for his employees in social and athletic clubs of other similar organizations that constitutes fringe benefits. So, therefore, ang monetary value natin dito is the amount paid. So, the entire expenditure shall be treated as taxable fringe benefits of the employee in full kapag involved siya sa social and athletic clubs. Okay, so madali lang naman i-identify niyan. So, na-explain ko na din yan on the first slide or yung previous slides natin na this is exclusively for social and athletic clubs only. Now, we have also holiday and vacation expenses. So, holiday and vacation employee borne by his employer shall be treated as taxable fringe benefit. So, ano yung magiging monetary value natin dito? The amount paid or shouldered by the employer. Okay? Therefore, kung ano na yung shoulder, yun lang yung fringe benefit tax. For example, So, San Miguel Corporation provided a 4-day free vacation to Boracay to all its employees, of which 80% are rank and file and 20% are supervisory. So, the total expenses incurred by the company for the said vacation amounted to 2 million. Now, alam naman natin na ang rank and file is non-taxable kasi part siya ng compensation, right? Okay, more specifically sa 13-month pay and other benefits. Now, the 20% lang yung magiging subject sa fringe benefit tax natin. So, from the 2 million, multiply tayo ng 20%, and yung makukumultiply natin sa 20%, that is by 400,000. Yan yung i-consider natin as the monetary value. So, this will be grossed up by 65% and multiply natin by 32% to get the fringe benefit tax due. So, that's all about cost of insurance, membership fees, dues and other expenses, and of course, the holiday pay and vacation expenses. Let's proceed with the expense accounts, household expenses, and interest on loan at less than the market rate. Now, expense account, which are incurred by an employee, by which are paid by his employer, binayaran. Sino nang incurred? Si employee. Okay? Incurred and paid by the employee, but reimbursed or advanced. Okay? Ni-reimburse by the employer. So, these are taxable fringe benefits. So, the monetary value here is the amount paid by the employer. Now, yun na nga, uulitin ko. So, magiging taxable siya if the expenses incurred by the employee pero binayaran ng employer. Aside from that, if nabayaran ng employee, ni-reimburse by his employer. However, we have to take note that if the above expenditures are duly received for and in the name of the employer, and these do not partake in the nature of a personal expense attributable to the employee, the same shall not be subject to fringe benefit tax. Okay, so sana naging klaro tayo dyan. So I have to give additional information. So if the expenditures, again, are duly received for in the name of the employer, meaning nakapangalan yung resibo kay employer and these do not partake as nature of a personal expense attributable to the employee. Hindi mo siya usual expenses. So the same shall not be subject to fringe benefit tax. What if personal expenses yan, sir, of the employee, like purchases of groceries for personal consumptions of the employee and his family members? Sino ang nagbayad, sir? Paid for or reimbursed by the employer. Siya na naman yung nagbayad. To the employee, whether or not the same are duly received for in the name of the employer. Whether or not. So, meaning, yan is magiging taxable fringe benefits. Okay, but we have to take note if there is a representation and transportation allowances that are fixed in amounts. Fixed siya and regularly received by the employees. So, this will be part of your compensation. Specifically, 13-month pay and other benefits. Okay, ayan. Subject to withholding tax on wages. So, lahat, okay, ng expenses. Okay, basta incurred by the employee pero paid by the employer, or kung nabayaran man ng employee pero ni-reimburse, or yung mga personal expenses whether or not yung pangalan is yung resibo is nakapangalan kay employer or hindi are taxable as fringe benefits. Now we have to move on to the household expenses. So expenses of the employee which are borne by the employer for household personnel such as salaries of the household head, personal driver of the employee, or other similar personal expenses like for example, payment for homeowners association dues, garbage dues, shall be treated as taxable fringe benefits. Okay, so ano yung magiging monetary value natin dito? The actual amount paid. Okay, and we have interest on loan at less than market rate. So I have already explained this a while ago, but we have to repeat it na lang. So it is the interest forgone by the employer representing the difference between 12% and the actual interest, okay, charge is a taxable fringe benefits. Okay, so ito yung magiging instance niyan if kapag Instead na uutang ka sa labas, pinautang ka na lang ng company at a lesser market rate. So kung ilan yung interest na difference outside and yung interest na binibigay ng company sa iyo or ini-impose, that will be considered as fringe benefit. Now, may mga rules naman yan. So if the employer lends money, yeah, so, ang yung magiging difference ng interest outside and interest na ini-impose sa iyo is the taxable fringe benefits. So, magiging benchmark natin yung interest na 12% and shall remain in effect until revised. Wala namang sinabing other interest yung train doon natin. So, it shall remain pa din 12% even though maraming mga variabilities as to the interest rates outside the company. Okay, that this regulation shall apply to installment payments or loans with the interest rate lower than 12% starting January 1, 1998. So, those are the rulings pagdating sa fringe benefit kay expense, household, and interest on loan at less than market rate. Okay, so dahil tapos na tayo sa pag-determine ng mga monetary values ng different fringe benefits. Okay, so our next step is the step number 2, which is to determine the gross up rate and fringe benefit tax rate applicable for the taxpayer are the following. So kapag resident ka, resident citizen, alien, or non-resident citizen, or non-resident alien engage in trade and business only, so our gross up monetary rate is 65% under the train law. Dati 68 yan kasi ang fringe benefit tax rate lang natin before is 32. Ngayon is 35 na. So we have to be careful of the rate, ha? What if non-resident alien not engage in trade? So that is 75% kasi ang tax niya is 25%. If the alien is employed in regional area or headquarters, ayan, employed by offshore banking unit, employed by service contractors, engaged in petroleum operations in the Philippines, or Filipino employee occupying the same position held by an alien, so 85% yung gross up natin and will be multiplied by 15%. Okay? So, ayan. So, how about if employees in Special Economic Zone, including Clark Special Economic Zone and Subic Economic Zone and Free Trade Zone? So, the gross up monetary rate will be 68, 75, or 85 as the case may be. So, after identifying the gross up rate, let us proceed to the step number 3. So we have to determine the gross of monetary value by dividing the monetary value, yung na-identify natin sa step 1, by the gross up rate. Ano yung mga gross up rate natin? 65, 75, 85, 68, 75, or 85. Depende sa taxpayer. Okay, so i-divide natin yun. So after dividing it, we'll proceed to step number 4. So we have to determine the fringe benefit tax by multiplying the fringe benefit tax rate to the gross up monetary value. Kung ano yung result sa na-divide natin na gross up rate sa monetary value na nakuha natin sa step 1, i-multiply lang natin siya sa fringe benefit tax rate. So yun na yung magiging fringe benefit tax natin or final tax on fringe benefits. So I hope naging klaro yung discussions natin as to the fringe benefits. Now, you can now able to answer the following questions given to you if ever may ibibigay si teacher na test or quiz. So I hope nakatulong itong voice over tutorial for you to answer your sit works and activities in class. So thank you and see you next meeting for our next video tutorial.